Hello everyone, this is Mary Sagstetter from AbleNet. I'm glad you could be with us today to hear about the session, which is termed Using Low Tech to Support Literacy and Learning. I am your presenter today. Again, my name is Mary Sagstetter. You'll see my email on the screen. You also will have my email and a thank you email to you at the end of this session. Please feel free at any time to reach out to me with questions that you have about today's sessions or any of the devices that you're going to see as we run through the session. Before we make an official start and I tell you about the goals, let's go ahead and see who we have on the line today with us. So please go ahead and insert in that little fillable area. Just click in front of the position that you hold in your school, in your clinic, in whatever position that you may be providing support to students and or clients with differing abilities. And I'm going to just wait a little bit. We have quite a few folks on the line with us today, and we'd like to have everyone respond, so I'll give you just a minute to go ahead and fill that in. We are just capturing the last of the folks that are on the line with us today. As you are looking at your computer screen, you can see who is attending our session today. And my response totaler has stopped, so I'm going to go ahead and we will make sure that we tighten those results down as firm results. Thank you very much for letting us know who you are. We welcome all of you to today's session, and we hope that you are going to go away with many different ideas and opportunities for today. Let's officially run through the goals of the session. My hope is that I'm going to increase your knowledge of assistive technology tools and strategies, and really we're going to be working on a literacy focus today, so you will see a number of assistive technology tools and strategies, all with that literacy bent. You will have multiple ideas to integrate technology into your student's day after the session. If you are using these ideas, go ahead and pat yourself on the back. If you also are, if you find these to be new and exciting, what a wonderful opportunity to take these away with you today. If as we're going through the session you decide that you'd like to share an idea and I could give it a shout out, I'd love to do that too. So in the top left-hand corner of your screen you have a chat, and you have a raise hand function. For today we want to use a chat feature. You all are on mute. So we would chat those over to a support person, Gloria, that's on the line. She's going to push them across to me and I will see them and I will answer them throughout the session, and or I'll give a shout out for the ideas that you're currently using with your students as well. This is a wonderful way for all of us to spend a little time networking. And the last bullet there, I'd like to share some teacher resources with you and some literacy materials as we get started. Please note in your thank you email you will have a couple additional handouts, and you'll receive those at the end of the session. Let's get started. So I want to ground us today in this statement. All students are ready to experience literacy-based interactions. And we're going to march forward with this and really talk about something that was listed out by Pat Miranda in 1988. This is nothing new. It's nothing new that literacy is a goal for all. I think it's something that we've been working on for an awful long time, and now with the advent of Common Core, with the fact that we are working more and more with our students on content area, I think we have a chance really to assist our students in moving towards this goal. I will read this too because I think this is an important statement. The notion that children are too physically, too cognitively, or too communicatively disabled to benefit from experiences with written language is not supported by current emergent literacy research. It's really about the fact that we as educators must firmly be committed to providing the best we can in literacy instruction, and we need to utilize the supports necessary, and that does include assistive technology. Let's think about here with the importance of literacy, let's think about these bullets. The first one being that academic instruction for students who are non-disabled does not change at signs of no progress. So there continues to be some discussion around the value of providing literacy instructions to students with disabilities, especially those with significant disabilities. And when we address this bullet, we need to think about the fact that Teachers in regular ed continue to provide academic instruction for typical students when they don't show signs of progress. That would be the same for our students that have varying abilities. Many of our students, it's difficult to see if they are going to be able to show us that progress. Often that onus lies with the educator to make sure that we find a way for them to communicate with us. So basically we're saying, even though our students may not be showing us signs of progress, we still need to keep teaching literacy. We still need to move them along that continuum. Historically, the focus has been on teaching functional skills, and it's really important to remember that reading is a functional skill. And having literacy skills can open doors to learning, enjoyment, and even work opportunities when we think about those students that are on that vocational path. In fact, all of our students are on that vocational path. So literacy greatly impacts our outcomes for students in elementary, middle, and high, and that's what we'll focus on. But we also know that these next bullets are very important for all of us to ground ourselves in as well. Students learn because someone, and that someone's you, is you. You believe in their capabilities. You have high expectations for your students. We know that if we don't have expectations for our students, they're going to live up to that, right? We need to make sure that those students that we typically do things to and for now are being pushed to be more independent. And that means that we need to increase our expectations for them. We need to increase that information, not increase, but we need to expect them to answer a question when we ask it. Not ask a question and then them not have a way to go ahead and be able to answer us back. We also need to realize that the process and the product are important. When you think about that, it is not so important that a student has a beautifully designed art project as much as it is that they have throughout the project communicated what color they wanted to choose, how they wanted that specific item to be placed on a piece of paper, whatever it is to get to that end result, that's the important piece. If the product doesn't look exactly like the one that I may have in my hand or another student has, that's not the important piece. What's important is that the process to a final product that is the student's own work is where we need to be with this. And you'll find this throughout the day as we go through some of these ideas within our literacy component too on how to get there. Also, we know that it's important that educators provide systematic strategies and instruction and tools for students. And that leads me into your next slide, which is an opportunity for you to take a look at a classroom. And a classroom that we will be able to include all of our students in many experiences, and yes, literacy experiences. Teachers, today we are more than ever expected to provide opportunities for students with both physical and cognitive disabilities, students with the autism spectrum, have those students engaged in literacy content and all the other content areas as well. And our educational environment needs to be designed or adapted for those students to have that success. And this is a view of a handout that I've added to the end of the session at the thank you note or email so that you will be able to go in and look at each one of these numbered areas that has an idea for use in the classroom with different strategies and different technologies that will be used through things that you do typically during the day. When you're in the computer center, when you're doing maybe a calendar activity, if you're working at the board, et cetera, even using an iPad, these are ideas of how to help students be successful. Also, we could label this or term this as universal design for learning. So all of our students would be able to be successful at those times. We are going to focus on the areas 5 and 6 primarily for our lesson today. So until recently, typical literacy materials have not been thought of as accessible to students with significant disabilities. We are going to show how those materials and strategies can be made useful and can be made accessible for students. So when I mentioned that on your handout, when we look at number 6, we are talking about looking at your literacy area in the classroom. We're increasing an opportunity for a student to ask for help by placing a step-by-step on the side of that literacy area. This particular literacy area allows for students to, because of the way it's mounted, allows for students to be able to ask for help. So as we tell a student, go over and take a book, from the Literacy Center and sit down to read, that student may get to that center and all of a sudden either forget what they're supposed to do, not be able to be successful in that particular task that we've asked them to complete. So we can leave a message there that they know they'll always be successful in gaining someone's attention, and then they will be able to announce to someone that they need assistance. We could also use that particular device to, rather than ask for help, we could use that to support a student in following anywhere from a 2 to a 4, even more, step direction in being successful on their own. So again, we can provide the student with the direction that you can go now over to the Literacy Center. When they get there, they can activate the device with messages that will guide them. First, a statement of where you are. You are in the Literacy Center. Next, it can say, get a book. Then next it can say, sit down and read. You can either have this on one message or it can be on 3 different messages, depending upon how you'd like to work with the level of the student. What we are looking at, again, is things that are done to and for our students. We need to help them increase their independence. We also then will be able to increase their independence in navigating a classroom if we go ahead and put messages on devices that allow them to be successful, to listen to auditorily hear messages at a center without us needing to be right there with them every step of the way. I wanted to bring you a video right now early on in the program here, and I'm going to play it for you. And let's see, I think it'll start up right away. We're going to talk a little bit about battery-operated toys in supporting literacy and using that as one strategy. Often we see battery-operated toys used in this fashion. And you look at this and see this little gal that would clearly not be able to crawl over to a stuffed toy somewhere, a battery-operated toy, not be able to crawl after it. But she has total control. And you saw her have that sensory experience of rubbing her nose right into the nose of that battery-operated pig. When you think about how powerful this is, we think about what else can we do that would help our students draw more meaning and attention to the current literacy activities that we may be working on with them. So, thinking about bringing in battery-operated toys into your reading and having them draw more meaning and comprehension to the stories that you are using. Thinking about here, Silly Sally and If You Give a Pig a Pancake are 2 resources that we can have battery-operated toys plugged into a 2-message device. The 2-message device is called the iTalk2. When I activate the symbol on the front that has the pig on it, it will say, I want to read if you give a pig a pancake. At the same time, that little pig is going to start moving forward. If I activate the side that says Silly Sally, the Silly Sally little figure there is going to start moving forward. Underneath that black cloth bag is actually a battery-operated penguin that kind of hobbles back and forth. So in this particular example, we're using the battery-operated toys to bring more meaning and comprehension to the character in the story. Think about this in the way that now you have every character that you would ever read about. You can go ahead and make a color copy of that character and just put it on a plastic bag or a cloth bag, whatever you would have that would cover up a battery-operated toy, and we now have that character. So let's say that we picked If You Give a Pig a Pancake. After we have taken away the Silly Sally components of this lesson, we can go ahead and change the message on the device. So where it was Silly Sally, we can change that to turn the page. We could change that to I want to see the picture. We could leave the pig in there plugged in, but we also could change that particular message to say, I see the pig. And as we're reading the book, we can ask students if they see the pig on that page. And when they do, they could activate that device, and then the pig would go ahead and move. So again, we can use one device to choose the story and then move it into being able to interact and have an opportunity to interact with print in the story. Thinking about these reading experiences, again, and we're still in the literacy area, we are looking at reading the story. And we talk about being able to have accessible books. And one way to have an accessible book or accessible story is to record the text from each page into a step-by-step. Now the step-by-step is a device that every time you touch the top, it will play a message that you've recorded into it. The device has 2 minutes or 4 minutes. There's a device with levels. So you have quite a bit of time for the easy readers or your fictional books for the text to be placed into the device. And then once you have that ready, your students are able not only to read books that you have selected or that they might have selected via the iTalk 2, but they also can create or read the books that they have created. So Allison here is able to go ahead and read each story of the book that she has already previously gone ahead and chosen the colors for and that were colored. And the idea behind this is you have these just printed out. They can be colored, put into plastic sleeves, and then easily into a pocket folder that has those rings that will allow for the inserts. And this way we can keep these books in our classrooms to be read and reread again. I do want to bring up to everybody's attention right now, though, that prior to going into reading the story, we need to make sure that our students have had experience with building background. So when we think about the idea that Allison could read her story, prior to that we would have wanted to make sure that she had knowledge about that story. So I'm going to move ahead just a minute here, and I'll move back. When you think about building background knowledge and you think about the story The Very Busy Spider, I'm sure all of you right now would be able to think about or recognize what this student is creating in front of her. So go ahead and use the chat field and see if you can answer what you think the student is being assisted to create. And I'll watch as a couple of those answers come in. And we have overwhelmingly the web, the spider web, the spider web. And yes, she is making a spider web. So when we go back to this slide beforehand, look at the second bullet. Extensive experiences are not the same. Many students that have physical disabilities, complex communication needs, as well as physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, they don't have the same experiences. They aren't able to put their hands in spider webs. They're not able to go ahead and maybe run after, if you will, or run away, more, more to the point, from a spider. We need to provide some type of grounding, some type of background knowledge for them, so when we read the story to them, that we connect them to that story. We also want to make sure that we connect our students to the purpose for reading. So today when we take a look at this particular story, we're going to build background knowledge based on whatever this story might be. Today's The Very Busy Spider. Now when you're thinking about this with regular ed, when I'm talking about this, because I did have a comment here, is that are we going to speak about incorporating these material strategies within the context of general education? When you look at general education and you are involving students and students are in the classroom that have either mild, moderate, or severe disabilities, building background knowledge is important for all students. This is what regular ed students do all the time with their teachers. So the fact that we have a student in the classroom that is going to need that be involved in that lesson, we may need to tweak that lesson a little bit. We may need to bring in something that has more of a sensory approach to it. We may need to make sure that however everyone else is accessing that particular lesson step, if you will, that the students we work with can accomplish that as well. Later on in the session, you will see an opportunity to look at something called the Action Dictionary. That is how we look at lesson steps and use technology to include students to help them actively participate in those lessons and actively engage. So let me move on here. Today, as we're going to be reading this story, after we build the background knowledge around a spider web and a spider, we're going to be reading that story to look for action words. And so on each one of these pages, those of you that are familiar with this story, you know that all of these action words arrive in sequence as we read these stories. So our students are going to start to look for these words. The other thing about all of these words is that they are very much, they are the verbs, they're the actions. We can simulate these, or our students can then be involved in actually experiencing these more in a sensory way. So that is how I would look at, especially with general education, if we're reading this story to the students, that we would involve our students more in a sensory opportunity for them to be involved in this particular piece. I had mentioned to you earlier that we were going to, I was going to give you literacy resources as well. and offer you some things. As you take a look at the handout, you'll notice that I am telling you about Dr. Carolyn Musselwhite. I offer her to you as an amazing resource for students that find challenges with literacy as far as accessing that. And she's gone ahead. She is one of our key thought leaders in the field. We have termed her that from AbleNet. And we would highly recommend, if you do not know her name, that you do a little research around her. She has a number of what she calls social scripts to use with the step-by-steps. So it provides an opportunity for students really to increase communication, learn about turn-taking skills, conversational turn-taking. Also, she's created 11 video clips that reside on this website that really talk about enhancing and supporting teacher practice in the area of literacy for students with significant disabilities. So I welcome you to listen to those webinars. They're not webinars, they're little videos, and they will move you forward with your practice of literacy. And I just got a message here that the Action Dictionary is my Bible, and you use it daily. I also had a message that someone just tried to connect to that website and that they got a 404 message, meaning it doesn't work. I'll check on that and make sure that we get that information back out to you. But you know what you really need to do is just search for Carolyn Musselwhite, and you would be able to go ahead and find her on the website, and it will guide you into this as well. But I can check that as well. Maybe I missed something at the end of that. So moving on, when we think about opportunities to engage in literacy, these are the things that we have taken a look at for our students, and we know that have worked and have been successful. Students being able to say, turn the page, offering a repeated line in a story, repeating the name of the character or identifier. So if I would say, if you give a pig a pancake, right? If you give a pig, we would underline the word pig, or we would point to the word pig. And so on the device, it would say pig. So when I'm reading, I would say, if you give a, and I would stop, and I would make that pause. I would point to that word and wait for that student to read that word. I may point to their device if they're not actively engaging and giving me that message right away. I may model that for them, but I'm going to stop and make sure that they understand that the words that I'm saying are the print on the page, and when I stop, that word is right now in the device, and they can say that word, and they can be a part of the reading experience. Again, you can also record a specific sound connected to the reading. So it may be something we know that pigs oink. We could have that also recorded on the device. More meaningful engagement for students, and often it is for the students in this particular population that need to be engaged. They need to pay attention. We want them to be active participants. We do not want them just there for the experience. We would like them to have a part in that experience. So speaking of which, sometimes we do need to add sensory components. The devices that are the step-by-steps and the other devices that AbleNet have in this same housing would be little step-by-steps, big step-by-steps, little Mac, big Macs, all allow for battery-operated toys or appliances to be plugged in, if you will, using the cord appliance cable in the back. So when I bring in a story about the windy day, and it says the wind blows strong, the wind blows soft, when I say those sentences, I can set the device up to when it's pressed at the top, it will send the signal to the fan and it will blow the wind. Again, I'm about meaning and comprehension, trying to help students experience what's happening and draw meaning to the word that we're talking about and representing at that time. Lots of ideas can be put around literacy for students and really have them actively participate. Again, I bring this back to when you look at general ed as well, and students have self-selected reading time. You are reading as the teacher. You have students that have an opportunity to answer questions. We need to make sure that all students have an opportunity to respond, ask questions during those engaging activities. So we can go ahead, and I'm going to start with Captain Underpants first. Take a look at providing devices that would have the comments that other students are making. And for the students that we work with, we need to support them in learning that there's appropriate times or times to say boo or to say yay. So as we're going through reading the story, it might be the comment that we would say is, this is a time I would say boo. Can you all say boo? And at that time, all of the students would then be saying boo, and then the student with the device could say that as well. Same thing with questions. We often need to teach our students about asking a question. One nice way to do that is just to take sticky notes and put a question mark on it, stick it on the page of the book, And then when you get to that book, you say, oh, this page, we're going to be asking a question on this page. You could have pre-recorded a question on the device, and then someone could be asking that question. For those of students that are readers, you could have an easy question written out. So again, they would be able to go ahead and ask the question, and we would teach about questions. We'd also teach about the answers. Many of the skills that we just assume students have that knowledge for, they really don't. And we have to start thinking about that and teaching it from the beginning of that moving forward. Often in regular ed we have the role models. In special ed we're in inclusive settings, we have role models. In our self-contained or our resource rooms, the role models are the kids in the classroom. And so if you don't have those skills resonating with all the students, then we have to go back a step further and teach those skills. Also think about students working with each other no matter what situation you're in. You want to talk about building fluency. We can read every other page of these simple easy reader books. You can record them into the devices, and now our students are going to learn about wait time, are going to learn about when it's their turn to read the page. You can also have someone that is verbally able to read the page or the text, and then the other student could have every other page recorded on the device. So nice ways to include students. When we think about reading, we think about repetition with a variety. We think about bringing a book into our classrooms. And when we're reading it with our students, we want to read that book several times a week in many different ways. And so what we talk about is reading a text multiple times for different purposes. So when we think about the purpose for reading, here we would read, or we would listen to the story so that you can identify the characters. And we might say, read the story so that I'm going to read the story to you, right? So that you're going to be able to tell me all the places that this character has gone. Okay? Listen to the story so that you can tell me all the feelings in this story. Whatever it is that you're targeting with that story, what you're trying to bring in to achieve those ELA goals with your students, you're going to identify that for them so they know what they're supposed to pay attention to. There's a lot of things going on in stories. So we want to make sure that we hone in on those most important features and characteristics of that story and help the students then identify that as well. And what we know is that when we are working on reading with our students, that they are going to have a chance to increase their comprehension as well as their fluency. So we want to pay attention to those items as well. And part of that is being able, when we look at our students that are paired together, we are talking about all students. So we would be looking at students that would be using a single message device, being able to turn a page is included, and we look at more as at that particular opportunity as active engagement. But we are talking about students that are moving along that continuum of learning, that are available or need to have available a communication opportunity so they can respond, so they can say they like the story, that they want to make if they want to make a comment about the page, or even say turn the page. Here you see an example with the iPad, and there is Caroline Musselwhite's literacy overlay is made on this particular it's used with our Sounding Board app, which is free from AbleNet. So if you don't know that right now, take a note, write down Sounding Board app, and go ahead and load it to your iDevices. It's a way to make free communication boards. But Caroline Musselwhite has one that I recreated myself as well. But this is the one that was used in this particular classroom so that the student could engage in communication and conversation during that story, typical to a peer that had was able to auditorily have that conversation with that fellow that's reading the book there. So thinking about literacy, of course, and building vocabulary knowledge, we have students that are able to read words. We have students that are going to be using communication devices. We want our students engaged in understanding the vocabulary that they are using within the stories. And so here we have an example of recording the devices where all of the words, all the vocabulary words will be recorded on the step-by-step, each on a different step, if you will. So every time you touch the top, the next message will be the next vocabulary word. So here's the word happy. On the back of this card, the teacher also has a symbol. So they can use either the text or the symbol or both when they are introducing and practicing vocabulary with the students. You will see that all the students here are in a row or in a line, and they're waiting their turn. We have active engagement happening. And we have students that clearly may need to use a single message device, or we have other students that we might question whether they really need to use it at all. Here, the person or the student that is second in line with the blue shirt, He's verbal. He doesn't need to use the device, but we know that it's okay if he does in this particular situation to go ahead and be part of this, and he's motivated and engaged with that. At other times, we're not going to have that device available for him, and he'll be reading those words on his own and in the materials that are presented to him. So it is absolutely fine to go ahead and in group activities, increase that engagement, increase that motivation by having everyone share these devices. These are devices that we call programmatic devices, not dedicated devices. So it's not like having a dedicated device where we don't share with others. This is a way that all students can actively participate in this activity. One thing I want you to notice that these particular devices have an opportunity where you can make the message stay on just a single message. So I can leave the device. It can say happy when the gal in the pink activates it, but when we pass it on to the boy in the blue, it can say happy again when he activates it, and we pass it on to the last gal, it will say happy again. So it will not move forward. We can make it remain on one message. There are instructions in your manual for that device if you haven't heard of that before, and it actually is a wonderful way to stop that sequence of messages when you're in the part of the activity that requires you to be on that same message, and then you can move it forward. An example of what you've seen here is really about either reading or answering a question, and we're expecting all of our students are going to be able to, read that vocabulary card. So here I brought up a picture of the Action Dictionary to share with you when we are requesting our students to answer, to give us feedback, we have to have a way for them to be able to respond. So whether it's eye gaze, it's pointing, it's reaching out and touching, or we use here a voice output communication aid. This is a sample of the Action Dictionary page. Again, I mentioned that it was free. You can find this on iBooks. It loads into your library. And we've gone ahead and listed out the action words that most often are done for our students. We want our students to be independent. You will find not only ideas with assistive technology that you may have in your classrooms, you also will find low-tech methods. For example, example 3 here talks about making sure that you have a visual representation and you're able to display those answers for your students so they can then eye gaze or point or touch. So not only do we want you bringing in, of course, the assistive technology with the voice output, but we also want you bringing in other low-tech methods as well to give students an opportunity really to be successful. And it's all about having the experience. We don't know often what our students are taking in, but we want to make sure that they have every opportunity to learn. Because we know for sure if we don't teach them, our students are not going to learn, right? If we teach them, we know they have a greater chance of that. So if you take a look at this information from the National Reading Panel, what we know is that explicit oral and written vocabulary instruction helps students understand word meaning. It also helps them understand how words are used in text, and it also contributes greatly to general reading comprehension. So really, students who read more, students who are exposed to reading, who are exposed to words, will know more words. That's just the way it goes. They will have a greater opportunity of having that available to them, and we need to figure out a way to make that happen for them. So as we look at different opportunities during the day, science is now coming up as a top opportunity for folks. Let me move back one slide. Oh, there we are. We're on the right side. A top opportunity for our students to engage in content area. And we know that right now many of the states have signed on. When you look at Common Core for reading and for math, science is coming next. Whether you have or not, this is still a great idea about recording the vocabulary word and then the definition. So again, for some of our students and those students that are working on the vocabulary word, then the definition, they can do some self-study or quizzing. So the example would be solid. It's firm or compact, right? Liquid, flowing or steady. We can ask this and have the other students repeat that back all the while the student that's using the device is taking in all this information. You can also take this a step further and think about how you can act this out. So imagine this in a classroom. Imagine this in a second or third grade regular ed classroom where we're saying, let's talk about solids. Solid means something that's firm or compact. We want everybody to stand very still and rigid at your desk. Next, it would be liquid. Liquid is something that is flowing readily. It's fluid. Go ahead and walk very slowly around your desk. So you can see this happening in the classroom. The student that has the device also is either, if they're in a wheelchair, we're pushing them around. If they are able to ambulate, right, they're part of that activity. And then we go into where it says the gas. It's a fluid that has no fixed shape, so we ask them to bounce around a little bit, give them examples of what that might look like. So again, these are the sensory experiences we can bring into our general education classrooms as well as into our resource room opportunities. We also want to remember that when we are looking at these resources, that students have a way to engage and have overlays based on core language or language that is relevant to the content that we're studying, so they're able to either say, turn the page, can I see the picture, act it out. If they want to stop, either stop reading, stop meaning they need to go ahead and either stop this activity, or stop can also be a sign that if you say stop, you can come over and say, can I help you? And it may be that the student needs to go freshen up, et cetera, or they need a break. So we want those overlays ready and available always when we're reading with our students. We also want to think about how we can bring in literacy in other ways for our students. And today I want to bring you an example of Gio, who is a student with autism, and he is working on vocabulary they are working on a science activity of people, basically people are plants. And so they're looking at identifying on the overlay. This is an alternate spinner. It's a random spinner. When you press the dial, it will randomly spin to a location, and they're identifying whether you have a person or a plant as the end result, and then they're going to identify that verbally using the voice output devices, and then they have a task that they will do after that, as you see in this short little video clip. I'd like for you to pay attention to Gio and the language that he has or doesn't have during this, and how he is using that overall voice output to support building his language as well.
Now it's Giovanni's turn. Push. Here. This one. 5. Miss Jackie.
No duck.
Is she a plant
Yeah.
or person?
Duck.
Plant or person?
Duck.
Which one?
Yeah.
Miss Jackie's a person. On our graph. Nope, right here. Try again. Here. No. Here. E. Here.
Yeah.
Good job.
So as you see with this particular video, there's a lot going on and a lot of literacy opportunity here, identifying a person, identifying a plant. The opportunity here was they were working on the vocabulary word plant. We also, the teacher brought in the fact about the people in the room, because they had wanted him to do and wanted him and all the students to learn about the people that they were interacting with and be able to name them. So it was another vocabulary opportunity. Again, you notice that he wasn't always able to produce the person or a plant, but once he heard it from the device or from the teacher, he was able then to repeat that, which we know is sometimes typical of students that are on the spectrum. As well as the teacher was now doing a bar graphing opportunity and brought that in as a nice opportunity for math skills and working towards that. So again, this is the way we take a look at being able to do an activity with students, a center activity, and support them where they're at based on what they are particularly studying at that time. So they have, then the plant book was read before this, and this is an extension activity after that. Thinking about other stories and how we can work on vocabulary, there are stories that this is a particular one called How I Became a Pirate. And you think about how you can access and activate prior knowledge. In this particular way, we would look at providing students with an assortment of pictures from magazines or an internet search. And this is before we introduce the book to the student. So we have all the pictures ready and available. And you can do this for any one of the stories that you're working with. So have the pictures ready. And then as you introduce the book, you're going to ask the students to sort the pictures that they have in front of them into 2 columns. So what is this about? Is it about pirates or not about pirates? So we'd have many examples of pirates and then many examples of not pirates. So I may see a pirate. I may see a gold chest with gold in it, those kind of things. I may see a baseball, right? So I'm going to be sorting them into columns. And then when I go ahead and have those column headers, it can be about pirates or not about pirates. I can use the device to activate at the time to say this is about pirates or this is not about pirates. The iTalk 2 would work perfectly, or 2 other devices would also work perfectly at that time. But it gives the students a way to go ahead and build background knowledge around those stories. One thing I really love these days is that with Google Images, you can just find anything. You go search pirates and it comes up this whole kind of the cartoonish opportunity to take a look at different images that would focus on this. So really easy. So think about something simple like this that's very engaging. Those of you that have whiteboards and smartboards, I'm sure could come up with something as well that would be fun as you post this up to your whiteboard or smartboard, and students can move those into those other locations. Other activities in the classroom when we think about, again, really focusing on letter families and how do all students have this opportunity. A student is going to need to go into the center, and all of these images and initial consonants here, the onsets and the rhyme, are available via a card that has Velcro on the back. So we can set this up and have students manipulate this, and then we can go ahead and come back and check if they got the answers right. One thing that a teacher's done is put this particular overlay as a support at the center. So everything that you saw on that screen, if you will, the Velcro screen, it's set here so that the student has that opportunity to go ahead and say the initial consonant. They're able to make the word with the at sound. They could say bat in full. The bat flew away, which is a sentence that they could create based on what letter sound they're working with, and then also the exact example of what they've created or very close to, and I'm going to just move back for you to see it again, very close to the symbols that have been created here, so that your students are going to be able to have that interaction and engagement at that lesson center. So again, a nice way of being able to support letter families. One other idea is to go ahead and working on letter families. We're out of Minnesota here, so snowmen are one of those things that we build frequently, and this year we've had no shortage of snow. We in fact still have little pieces of it on the ground. But here we have the initial consonant, B, C, and T, and now you can see that we can deal with different word families and build different snowmen. Again, nice center activities, but what we're finding is that these are regular ed activities that students are doing. We can bring support in with literacy with assistive technology support so that our students are able to do those same ideas. And I do have a question right now, so let me go ahead and answer that. Kim is asking, is a literacy overlay available on Sounding Board? I think you're referring back to the literacy overlay I said that Carolyn Musselwhite made. No, but you know what? You're going to see it coming up here shortly, and then you'll be able to go ahead and recreate that yourself if you'd like. I do want to share some assessment ideas with you when you are using voice output devices that have multiple messages. What I've created here is an opportunity for a student to be able to say, if we go across the first row, question 1, what is the story about? And then your answer would be zookeeper, pilot, or fireman, because you've already read a story on the zookeeper, the pilot, or the fireman. And then number 2, so it would say question 2, moving to the second row, who is the main character in that story? And so then again, you have a choice of who that main character is. Number 3, right? And we could say, what is it, excuse me, we would be, what is the story about? You could also then, number 4, have the resolution or the end. How did the story end? My goal in sharing this with you is that many of our students, again, have things done to them and for them, meaning that if we're providing them with a paper pencil activity and asking them somehow to get that information or that answer on a page, and they are a student that are not, that are not able to do that in that particular moment in time for whatever reason, how do we help them give us the answer, right? So if they're not going to pick up that pencil and circle it, maybe they're going to be able to interact this way, and then we can circle that answer. We can say we can write a note on the piece of paper saying, John was able to answer this using the voice output communication aid, right? Another way when you're just using a single message device would be for us to point to zookeeper, point to pilot, point to fireman, each time saying what the example was, and then saying to them, let me know, right? So they could nod, they could make a gesture, or they could use a device that just had the message recorded into it. That's the one I want. You would not necessarily have to do that on the device. You would use then whatever material you're reading from or working from. So if you have a literacy program that has a pre-designed chapter test or comprehension test, you then would be pointing to each answer. The student would then activate the device, and they would be able to say that's the one they want. Even if they got it wrong, we would circle the incorrect answer, and we would go back and we could teach from that. But it would be their work and not someone else's work. So we're really looking at independence. Moving to a little bit of a higher cognitive skill when you think about this is interacting and really thinking about syllables. Now all of our students can go ahead and work on syllables when you think of it in this fashion, because we're going to clap those syllables. Many of our students aren't able to clap. So for those that aren't able to clap, and even some of those that are, it's kind of a fun activity to be able to identify how many syllables are in each one of these words, and they match as you go across each line. Now this is a Quick Talker 23 overlay. It is one of AbleNet's new products that's in the Quick Talker line. We have a 7, a 12, and a 23. Again, whatever materials you have in your classroom, whatever voice output devices you have with multiple messages, you can lift or use any of these ideas that I'm sharing with you today. You may have to shorten them if you don't have as many messages. But again, this can be a wonderful center activity for students, and a paraprofessional can go ahead and lead this very easily with your students. You could also project something like this to a whiteboard or a smartboard. And you might say, well, how would I project something like this to a whiteboard or a smartboard? I'm going to tell you that right now. This overlay is the All About Me overlay, and it allows students to share a lot with them. And at this time of the session, folks will say, well, you know, what symbols are those? How are you creating those boards? What's that all about? And I say, you know what? We're using the Matrix Maker Plus software. This software, you have a free download, a 14-day trial that will come to you at the end of this session, and it is a software for making communication overlays. You have to note that this is a Windows-based program, but it's very easy and intuitive to use. And you can project, once you've made an overlay and it's on your computer, you can project that at any time. So when you think about that, I can leave these overlays right up on the board. And whether it's a smartboard or a whiteboard, I always say whiteboards because we can just project things and make them at least more interactive proof. We don't have that interactive technology, and we can ask students to come up and touch and circle or do things like that to make it more interactive. We can project these and our students can see these. This may be, again, a little bit too much for some of your students, and you may want to look at something more on the basis of having less symbols. But again, whatever levels your students are at, you're going to be able to make and create those overlays. So if you have a Mac, go ahead, or not a Mac, sorry, apologize Mac users that are on the line with us. But this is a Windows opportunity for you. Again, it's a free trial download to go ahead and make as many symbols and boards as you want for the different devices that you may have within your particular setting. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about phonics, and we'll do some fast, quick ideas here. Let's do the missing sound. Record on the device any sound that you are currently working on, and we can do a direct teaching of a set of letter-sound relationships. And those, when we do that, we improve word recognition, we improve spelling, and we improve reading comprehension. So it really is just a simple activity called the missing sound. And you could use your whiteboard or your smartboard again for something like this as well. Let's think about fluency. This bears repeating. You've heard this before, but it bears repeating again, where we're going to use a little step-by-step with levels. And you could record the repeated word. You could record a repeated line. You could record an appropriate sound effect. In addition, easy reading materials, we know that easy reading materials develop fluency. They also, when we work on this with students, help them to provide increased reading skills, and it gives them the opportunity to really interact with the repeated lines, predictable stories, which gain that language competencies. So if we have this opportunity for each one of these particular items, so on level 1, because this is a step-by-step with levels, we record a repeated word, we could have that available with the book. The same book we could use if it had a repeated line, we could put that on level 2, and then the sound effect could be on level 3. So anytime during that story, we could have this designed for a student to go ahead and build their skills. We also could have it available to pass around the classroom, drawing attention to what we were going to work on at that particular moment in time, but be able to switch back and forth between any one of these and between any one of our students. And again, what we're talking about is bringing in easy text or easy reading materials for students, because that is how we work with this fluency and build fluency with our students. Think about an opportunity to work on predictions. As you're looking at your ELA standards, you are being asked to work on predictions with students. So predicting the story can be done through a picture walk, and this is a strategy that teaches our immersion readers to use pictures. And they're really using picture clues as an understanding, and we are going to understand the meaning of the story, and it's about guessing at unfamiliar words as well. So here's how it really works. First, the teacher directs the student to look at the cover of a few pages of a book. And then your students are going to predict what the story is going to be about, given picture choices to select from if needed. So if needed, you would show picture symbols. If not, we're going to go ahead, we could write this on the board, and of course we can record those predictions into the step-by-step. So the predictions that the students make are written or posted on the board. And it's really important that our students see that their words have meaning, that their words turn into written language, and that's why we would always try to take in these activities and write what our students are saying to us, whether they're saying it auditorily themselves independently or they have it recorded on a device. So we take this information, and now as we are going through the story, we stop and we say, we thought that this was about going trick-or-treating. Do we still think this is about going trick-or-treating? So we would go back and talk with our students about it, or we can say, let's do a check. We thought there were 3 things that we thought this story might be about. And then that student can go ahead and review what they are, and students can have that discussion again about what this story is going to be about. So again, it's about predicting the story. It's something you can do with any book that you bring into your classroom. It can be done in a regular ed classroom, self-contained classroom, but it's about having a student be in control of a part of that activity. And the step-by-step will allow students to have that opportunity. Still thinking about print materials, what we know is that the first step to engaging and participating in reading is to provide students with access to print materials. And another piece would be to create images or characters that will show actions or concepts in the book. And so it's something like you could use paper symbols, but think about mounting them to popsicle sticks. So you can take and you can make those characters on popsicle sticks, or you could just take that symbol itself, and then the student now has a way to actively engage within that literacy opportunity. So as the student reads the book, other students, can hold, or as you read the book, they are going to listen and hold up their picture symbol or their character when it appears in the book or when you are requesting it. So again, it's about what the story content's about, what vocabulary you're having come across, and what you're asking to have happen. So we are increasing the attention to a story when we do this, and we also are increasing that responsibility of the student. We're asking them to pay attention, and then they have that sense of anticipation or responsibility. It's like when the teacher says, I'm going to call on someone to answer this question. We want all of our students to think, oh, it could be me, and I need to be ready to answer. So I've listed a couple benefits of this here. Our nonverbal students, it gives them an alternative way to demonstrate comprehension and attention to the book. For our verbal students, it really does give them the opportunity to describe what's happening in the story. And I wanted to bring up this. Again, I'm going back to that battery-operated toy example that I brought up at the beginning of the session. And I wanted to bring it up closer here to the end of the session because I wanted to share with you how you can use these devices to go ahead and retell stories as well. One of your ELA standards will ask for you to have students summarize or retell a story. Now, this example is from someone called another key thought leader in the field, and I should have written her name on the slide. It is Linda Burkhart. This is her example of being able to have our students interact with literacy, have them being able to retell a story. So we have the billy goat. It's going to knock the troll off the bridge. We can easily do that with a simple switch and a battery-operated toy. Again, if you choose not to cover the toy, that's absolutely fine. It's just a piece of Velcro on the back of the billy goat and a piece of Velcro on the toy itself. This is a little toy or battery-operated, more of a plush, not plush, but a soft truck that moves ahead when you activate it. The other pieces that I choose often to cover the toys because I don't want them to be a distraction and I want the student to focus on the actual character in the story. Again, just going ahead and creating a picture symbol, blowing it up, or you can photocopy a picture from the story as long as you keep it with the story. Then you have a way to retell the story. Using the step-by-step, you can record a summary of the story, and on the exact message where it says the billy goat is going to knock the troll off the bridge, you can then have the billy goat walk forward only at that time. And again, that's a special feature that most folks aren't aware of, where it will activate a battery-operated toy at the right moment. Then you will find that information in your manual. If you don't have a manual right now, you can go ahead and check one out, or not check one out, excuse me, find one online. All right. Again, I'm just going to put a plug in for battery-operated toys because I think they are a way to develop motivation for our students, and they are an opportunity for them to experience reading or literacy in a well-rounded way, I should say, and give them that opportunity for active engagement. They're not just sitting on the sidelines. They are actively engaged in retelling that story. Let's think about access to literacy in a different way here. Ablenet has a product called the Bookworm, and the Bookworm provides an opportunity for students to engage in the real book experience. Real books are important, and I know we're moving these days to e-books as well, and I think that your iPad and e-books are all part of a portfolio, yet we have a lot of libraries at school that are full of books, are full of wonderful resources that we don't want to miss out on. And when we're looking for a particular book, we don't want to have to buy it or search for it either. So we're going to look at still providing access and gaining access to this wonderful literature that's available. The text from the book is recorded into the device. On each one of the locations on the front of the alternating colors, a student then would be able to press that and have the text read. Or they would be able to use a switch to sequentially move through those pages. This particular device works for any age, for students to work together. It also works for any ability. So our students that are going to be listening to the stories, they are going to be not able to physically turn that page, but they're going to read each page. They can use their dedicated switch. So whether it's just a regular jelly bean, as you see here with the yellow switch top at the left, on the right we have a student using a candy corn, which is a proximity switch. So when this individual gets within 10 millimeters, it will read the next page. I'd like to give you a little bit of a deeper view of what this is, and so I did bring the video to you today just to learn a little bit more about accessible literacy.
Hi, my name is Jason from AbleNet, and I'd like to introduce you to Bookworm. Now, some of you may even be familiar with AbleNet's first Bookworm from years ago, and as I think you're going to see, we brought Bookworm back better than ever. Bookworm allows you to use any book in your library, and with a few simple modifications in your own recorded voice, you can create a switch-adapted audiobook for your child or student. Now, the first thing you'll notice about Bookworm is its much improved, sleek design. This is a product your child or student will be excited about using at home or in the classroom with peers. But it's not just the design that's different. We've made Bookworm easier to use than ever. Let me demonstrate today by recording 2 pages in this book, which is included in AbleNet's new Focus on Science curriculum book sets. My first step is to clip the back page of the book into the bottom of Bookworm, making sure to use the guide to help my book stay in place. You can see the guide right here. I'm going to make a small adjustment. Perfect. Next, for my first page pair, I've placed a reader sticker on the book aligned to the first location on my alternating color touchpad. For my second page pair, I've aligned my sticker to the second location. Now I'm going to plug in my switch now so I can show you those functions in just a bit. To begin recording each page pair, I press the power button to turn on Bookworm. Next, I press the play record button so that record is displayed on the screen. With the first page pair open, I press and release the touchpad location next to the sticker I added earlier. This makes sure that my recording and my book are in sync. To stop recording, I press that same location again. Feet and Legs by Jonathan A. Brown. Now I'm going to do the same thing on my second page pair. I press the touchpad location once to start recording and press it again to stop. Animal legs come in many shapes and sizes. Deer have long legs to help them run fast. Cats have strong back legs so they can spring on their prey. Moles have short, strong front legs for digging. Now, I've only recorded a couple of pages, but you get the idea. Simply repeat the steps I've shown you here to record every page pair in your book. Now Bookworm's ready to use. To begin playing, make sure to press the Play Record button so that Play is displayed on the screen. Bookworm allows you to activate the pages using direct access on the touchpad here, or by using your favorite switch, which plugs into the side of the Bookworm unit. I'm going to show you both. To play the first page pair, I'm going to press the touchpad location as indicated by my sticker.
Feet and Legs by Jonathan A. Brown.
Now I'm going to use my switch to play the second page pair.
Animal legs come in many shapes and sizes. Deer have long legs to help them run fast. Cats have strong back legs so they can spring on their prey. Moles have short, strong front legs for digging.
Now remember, if I use a switch, each activation is going to play page pairs in sequence, so plan on a helper or peer to assist in turning the pages.
So that is the Bookworm, and that shows another way for accessible literacy. I am going to be leaving you at this time, and my hope is that I have met your expectations and mine for increasing your knowledge of assistive technology tools and strategies with a literacy focus. Really, this is the tip of the iceberg. As many ideas as I've shared with you today, there are so many more. So the back end of the session and your handout is loaded with a few more that deal a little bit with computer access and pairing your computer with voice output. And then also I did put in some things that are around Switch Accessible software, and some of them are free and some of them for purchase, so I'd like you to take a look at that back end of the session for that. And then also some ideas of how to interact with writing. There are resources available for you, literacy resources that are already pre-designed or created from AbleNet. We have a wonderful program for literacy books, nonfiction books called Focus on STEM, and then our Meeville to Weevil literacy program for emergent readers, where teachers have the tools, they have the materials and the lesson plans already ready, and it shows you, using the Action Dictionary, how to include that technology to really integrate it for success for the student throughout the day. So I'd ask you to take a look at those handouts when you receive them in your thank you email. And I'm going to, at this time, thank you very much for attending our session today. I know you all need to get back to whatever you were doing. We do encourage you to listen to more of our recorded sessions at AbleNet University, and for sure sign up for more live sessions like today. Again, thank you for your time and attendance today, and you can now log out of the session.